for organizing this wonderful FDP, and I'm glad I'm one of the speakers. So what I'll do is I'll have a few slides. So I'll go through the slides slowly. So my presentation will be for say 40 minutes or less than that. After that, we can have an interaction. Okay. So just a minute. Is it visible, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Emerging trends in language, literature, and culture. Now, this is a very important shift which is taking place in language and literature. Now, today I will just brief you about how it started and where this shift is leading us in the future. Okay. Now, as we know that culture studies is an interdisciplinary field. So you cannot just say that only one area of study belongs to culture studies. Okay. It does not have one voice, and it cannot be also spoken with one voice. So it's from a variety of academic disciplines: sociology, anthropology, English literature, okay, all converged, and culture studies picked up as an entire discipline on its own. If you ask me when it exactly started, see, you'll be knowing history in a sense like after the Renaissance, a very big shift happened in the culture. So Renaissance was from 12th century, 13th, 14th, and 15th century. Then after 16th century was the era of colonization. Britishers came to India just as the French colonized Africa. So after that, there were a lot of changes because this was one time where the East and the West were in contact. So cultures merged, but it was not a very natural phenomena, but it was by force, which is what we are going to learn later. So slowly after that, two eminent personalities became very, very popular. One is Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. His very famous book, The Interpretation of the Dreams, you would have heard about it or read it. And the other person was Karl Marx. So both of them were very popular in 19th century. Then before that it started, but after 19th century, this became a very interesting field. And as an academic discipline, it became very, very prominent in 1960s. Clearly visible. 1960s, 1970s, 1980s was the golden period. Then after that, like it pushed itself into the future. Okay. Now, what is going to be your objective if you are going to explore culture studies? Now, it includes gender, race, class, colonialism, okay, and the like. But the main focus here is when two cultures collide, it's not just two cultures or many cultures collide, there will be an uneven distribution of power. How the power functioned because of this shift is the primary focus of culture studies. In other ways, you can say culture studies will help you to understand the power politics, what is happening now. For example, if you want to understand 21st century, the present contemporary politics, you should know how power was used as a very powerful weapon in the past and how it will go in the future. You can predict. That's why it deals with the relationship between power and how it influences the culture. Okay. Now, it is not just uh, one discipline, just as I told you, you can extend it to various fields. For example, you can explore cinema based on culture studies. You can work on novels. Many students have worked on novels. Today, I will brief you a little about cinema also because the topic is interesting and broad. We can bring in cinema also. So, it's a discursive formation that is a cluster. In other terms, it's an umbrella term. It's not just one. So you can say like I have studied a culture of a particular nation, so I know culture studies. It's not like that. It is an emerging field. That's what I am very particular about it, and it will emerge. Okay, it will emerge. Okay, it's an emerging field. Right? Now, key concepts in culture studies. It includes how meaning is created in the society, how literature creates meaning in the society, how politics creates meaning. Okay, now how cyberspace creates meaning. Okay, so all those things are how the relationship between power and meaning. Okay, power and meaning, how it creates. Okay, who is the dominating power and who is the submissive power. You know for sure that language carries culture, hence language is very important, and language also carries power. So it is a very powerful combination. Okay, language, culture, and power. This powerful triangle, you can say, is the main objective of culture studies. There are many objectives, but how power is distributed. Okay. Now, how this power is represented. Now, this is a different phenomena. First is you have to understand who creates this power and how this power is projected or represented in arts. That is will be a primary focus. Okay. So if you understand this power structure, you can critically appreciate art, not only literature. Art is a diverse field. If you are well versed in culture studies, you can interpret a painting. Okay, you will become very critical. You will become very critical. Now, this is what I said. Cultural representations and meanings have a certain materiality. They are embedded in sounds, inscriptions, objects, images. Okay, you'll be able to understand the underlying science in it. Okay, you will not be a very naive consumer of cultural products, but you will become a very conscious cultural critic, understanding the power structure. Okay, that is the like the power of culture studies. I would call it that way. Now, I will extend my presentation to post-colonial studies because, on a larger note, on a bigger, broader way, culture studies is general. We will converge it to post-colonial studies. Then from post-colonial studies, I will extend it further to cultural production so that it has a kind of a focus. You will know like how it has emerged and how you can understand it. Okay. Now, post-colonialism it's not an outdated term. The point is like many uh, critics or many uh, researchers don't understand the potential this field has. I'll tell you why in the end of the presentation I chose this particular one for you. Okay, I'll tell you. Now, postcolonial studies is a field of academic study which investigates the impact of colonization and how it continues to have the effects on cultures and society around the world and surrounding the discourse on the same. See, colonization is how one country uses military power to colonize another country. Okay, for example, I told you like in 17th century, 18th century, 19th century, the entire Arabia, I mean Africa, India, it was all colonized by the West. So the Europe colonized uh, the East. I would say the West colonized the East. So post-colonialism is a study of this, how the colonizers used different colonial strategies to colonize a country. For example, the strategies which were used in India was not used in Africa. See, in Africa, when it was colonized, they made the people believe that they do not have a very sophisticated culture, and they the colonizers could colonize Africa easily. Okay, but colonizing a country which is rich in culture like India was not easy for them. So they had to use different colonial strategies. Language, they had to change the language. They have to change the dressing sense of the people. They had to change the lifestyle of the people. So they wanted to colonize a particular country in using different colonial strategies. So it was not just one strategy. Okay. Now, if you understand this, the strategies which were used to colonize another country was quite different. Although it appears to be simple, but it's not really. It is deep. Okay. Now, post-colonial is a term. It's not a very loose term. Like say after 1947, all the novels are post-colonial in context. That is a very loose way of putting it. It's not like that. It has to deal with the impact of colonization. Okay, so I will introduce three critics, world famous, who talked about this. Then I will give you future directions. Frantz Fanon was the very first critic. His famous book, Black Skin, White Mask, and The Wretched of the Earth, very famous book. He talks about the psychological aspect of colonialism. What happens to the mind of the colonized, here the Africans? So he was very particular about like what really happens to people when you colonize. So you make them as subhumans. For the rest of their lives, they are going to be subordinates, submissive, and they are literally in an identity crisis. So Fanon's contribution to post-colonial theory is so immense. Only if you understand Fanon, you will be able to build on other important critics later. Okay, so that's why the thrust is given to Fanon. And he said that the violence was used as a colonial weapon, both by the colonizers and the colonized. And decolonization is always a violent phenomenon. So coming out of this impact of colonization is not easy. Okay, I will tell you why this is not easy. Okay, in the end I will tell you. Right? So Fanon was the first critic. Then Edward Said, very famous critic. He was a Palestinian. When Israel was formed in 1948, millions of citizens of Palestine were displaced. So his family was also displaced. Later, he went to foreign country and became a big cultural critic. So after Fanon, his very famous book is Orientalism. He said how the West projects the East. Now, Fanon talks about violence, more of violence, the impact of colonization. In other words, you can say the psychology of the colonized. Fanon talks about it. But Edward Said, he talks about like who are the Orients and who are the Occidents. The Orients are actually the colonized people, and the Occidents are the West. So how the West projects the East in literature, in cinema. So this was his whole study. So he was an extraordinary critic. He was an extraordinary critic, and he was against the imperialistic policies proposed by Israel and America. Throughout his life, he resisted. He coined the very famous term victim's victim. Victim's victim. Because Israel, Israel, the country of Israel, it was a victim in World War II. Because we know that the Nazis, they crushed them in Germany. More than 6 million Jews were killed, okay, in concentration camps. So they were victims. Few decades ago, they were victims. But after the formation of the country in 1948, they started victimizing their enemies around. So he formed the term victim's victim. Okay, very important term in psychoanalysis. Okay, so what kind of a strategies they follow? So his books dealt with this very famous and very important seminal work. Then after that came a very famous and important book, The Empire Writes Back. Well, this is a very interesting book. So it was the extension after this Fanon. It was Bill Ashcroft who took this project, post-colonialism, to a very different level. The Empire Writes Back. Now, if you understand, this book was written closely in 1980s or the beginning of 90s. The structure has changed completely. It was no longer the political scenario of 1960s or 1950s. It has come to 1980s and 90s. Okay, this was the situation. So they were able to suggest lot of methods to decolonize the language. See, the scope of postcolonialism does not lie in getting independence. We got independence in 1947, but we find a lot of Indians who take pride in associating themselves with the Western culture, who do not have any regard for Indian culture. This is 21st century. Psychologically, they believe whatever the West had said or whatever the West says is right. Whatever they feel that what their own culture has taught to them is wrong. They are psychologically attached to Western cinema. They think Hollywood is the best, superior. Okay. Okay, they think Hollywood is the best. So this mindset that is known as the colonial mindset. So interestingly, Bill Ashcraft and Gareth Griffin suggested ways to decolonize the mind, decolonize the colonial language. Ngugi Otiango, another post-colonial critic, okay, he also suggested that the language should be decolonized. They said a lot of interesting techniques to decolonize the language. For example, there is a cockfight in Madurai, okay, Jallikattu near Madurai. Do you think a Westerner will be able to describe this scene without understanding the cultural context? A Westerner will be confused. His language will be very good. But how will he understand this cultural context? Only an Indian like you will understand the culture of your country. Only you can represent. So, Bill Ashcraft were telling a lot of strategies which will fight against this hegemonical structure. He said, like, if you use your own language, the words in the idioms and the phrases in your language, if you fuse it into the English language, the language will become post-colonial language. Okay. So it's a very important one. He said that in 1990s, close to that. Okay. Very important because this is how it was emerging. It was emerging in 1990s. Okay. Now, I have introduced three authors. The field, how it started as a cultural study, then converged to a particular theory of post-colonialism, then moved on to the critics, important critics. Now, these three critics are easy for students in BA and MA level to explore. For BA, it may be slightly difficult, but with little training, the MA level, they can try these theories to start with. Once you are familiar with this, you can move on to higher level. Like you can touch Baba, location of culture, Gayatri Spivak, can the subaltern speak? So these are all becoming very popular in 1980s and 1990s completely. So you can go for some very important theories by these important cultural critics, including Michel Foucault. But you can only understand them if you know these basics. Else you will not understand because that's meta-theoretical. You should know theory to understand a higher level theory. It's of that level. Okay. Now, how do you apply theory to books? You can choose books which are related, which has the impact of colonialism in it. For example, novels by Amitav Ghosh, Arundhati Roy. If you feel that the novel is worth, for example, God of Small Things, there is a reference to colonialism in the past, the old house, and you can explore that. Okay. Upmanyu Chatterjee's English August Indian Story. It's a classic. It's a classic. The beauty is that it represents Indians. Okay. The characters, the protagonist name is Agastya. It's like Agastya Munivar. We know that. He's a very famous Indian seer. But the protagonist wants to call himself as August, English August, because he was born and brought up in Delhi. He studied in a very good college like St. Stephen's of the very high level like JNU. So he was born and brought up in a metropolitan city. Now, what happens in the novel? He is shifted to a place, a village known as Madna, where the entire village shocks him. So he says, "This is not India. I don't want to be here. I want to go elsewhere." So the ambiguity faced by the character. Okay, so what kind of a cultural shift he faces? It's a beautiful novel. It was written like in 1980s. It was written. It's a first of its kind. Still, no novel is a match for that novel. So, as a beginning point, you can try these introductory novels, okay, which has got the impact of colonialism. Okay, not you may also try novels which has got a direct impact of colonialism. Okay, violence on whatever it is, but after colonialism, what happened to the mind of the characters? You can understand it. Okay, you can start with it. It will be of great use. And Shashi Tharoor, he talked about this in various academic institutions. So the impact of British colonialism, if you are interested, you can explore books by Shashi Tharoor. Then his novels, you can explore what he has said about it. So this is an Indian context. You can explore African context if you want. So this is about novels. Now coming to culture, I talked about literature and language. More of literature, of course. Coming to culture, once you understand this theory very well, you can apply it to cinema and other cultural productions. For example, Avatar, Avatar movie, you can view the movie from different levels. As an ordinary critic, you can just watch it, okay, and enjoy the 3D effects in Avatar, okay. The director is James Cameron, who made Titanic. Now he made a great movie, fine. Now, if you understand it from a post-colonial perspective, your reading will be completely different, okay, because it talks about not colonizing the earth, but colonizing another planet outside the earth, Pandora. Same, the colonizers are humans and the colonized are aliens. Then why are they going to colonize Pandora? They have a mineral known as unobtainium. For a resource, they go to colonize the planet. It is a parallel, very simple. It's a parallel reading to how what America did to Afghanistan, to Iran, Iraq for their oil resources. What America did, this has found its expression in the movie. So this movie is a very interesting one. From a post-colonial perspective, you can say that the movie is post-colonial, also colonial, because there are other psychological readings. That's what I said. You come across different levels when you take this theory and understand it clearly. Okay, and after that, little later, there were some very interesting movies like the Black Panther, okay, Django Unchained. There are a lot of references to colonialism. Okay, a lot of references to violence. These are all you can explore it. Explore it. I'm just giving you the names. Okay, it cannot be an in-depth study because for each movie I can take half an hour to explain. One complete half an hour, but the take back should be very interesting based on this lecture. So various cultural productions, this is emerging. If you understand, these movies were made in 2019, 2018. Okay, okay. Avatar was a bit late, but now it's very. This is an emerging trend in cinema. Now the shift has completely moved. The objective is aimed by Fanon in 1950s and 60s. As a seed level, it has started growing. It has started growing. This is the emerging shift. Emerging. So you should be able to understand. Only then you can become a critic. You can become a researcher. Else it will be very ordinary viewing of a movie or reading a novel. How can you critically appreciate it matters? Okay. Then this is for beginners. But if you want to extend it to higher level, at one point, theories like post-colonialism will merge with postmodernism and post-structuralism. So if you want to explore how language developed after the advent of post-structural theory and link it with the impact of post-colonialism, you will find out the impact of this in language. Okay, how language changed, okay, from linguistic study to post-structural study. This is the area to start. Okay, if you are interested in that area, that is the area for you to start. Now, because of this shift in academic universities in the West, in India, it will take some time. India, we are spending time on just academic institutions are more into reading these theories and including it in the curriculum. That is what they are doing. Now the West has gone to the level of decolonizing the curriculum. Look at the impact, the force of this particular one. So they are bringing in indigenous curriculum, indigenous subjects as primary focus, and they are gone to the extent of decolonizing the entire curriculum. To that extent, it has gone. Okay, I will end with a very interesting scientific pursuit, because it is not just decolonizing the academia. Now efforts are being made to decolonize science. Whether we like it or not, there will be always resistance against this. But in the West, there was a scientific study known as Preenology. Preenology means a study of skulls. The European skull is superior to the African skull and the Asian skull because it has got very well developed medulla oblongata, cerebrum, cerebellum. It's a scientific study. The entire Europe believed in this colonial science of Preenology based on the shape and size of the skull. Powers were attributed and distributed and associated. So this belief was carried into the academia. Still, Europe, they are exploring this. Okay, still they are exploring this. Okay, there are they if you go to British Museum, you'll be surprised to know that they will collect the skulls from different cultures and they will explore it and study it. They're crazy in this study. Oh, this is a colonial science because it is not acceptable. Like based on the shape and size, how powers can be established, and how can you say this race is superior to or inferior to a particular race? This is just the shape of the skull. But the West is obsessed with this. It's obsessed with this. So now efforts are being, okay, studies are being done by Tabish Kayer and the like to explore this area. And they want to decolonize, okay, the colonial science, the academic institutions, language, power, politics, everything. So the future is going to be very interesting. You can only understand it if you grasp the theory well. Okay, so I will stop here, and it's open for questions. Shall I stop sharing?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Participants, if you have any questions, please unmute and you can ask. Okay. So there's one question.
Yeah.
What are some of the interdisciplinary research options in cultural studies?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
By Dr. Vijay Kumar.
Okay. Okay. Now, in different levels, you can answer this question. Okay. Now, culture studies itself is not one field; it's a diverse field. Okay, so you have to extend this. Okay, now if you take English language teaching, literature studies is different, language studies is different. Okay, it's two. But if you want to merge both, at one point you can fuse this both theory, post-colonial theory, with some point in ELT to explore a particular one. Efforts, people have taken some efforts to do that. Okay. Now, Indian indigenous culture, okay, knowledge system, this Ayurveda and the like. Now they are trying to study it not as one, but they want to mix it with others and make a comparative study. What happens when you mix this with Indian, is this with other one? What happens? So people are curious about this mix. Okay, so this is how it begins. This is how it begins. Okay, there are various other signs it can happen, other things it can happen. Yeah. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. The next question. What are some of the top journals in culture studies and post-colonization?
Okay, at the foreign universities level, we can Ariel Journal for Postcolonial Studies. It's a very high-end reputed journals, and the rejection rate is pretty high if you try that. But at the Indian level, you can try Rupkatha to start with Rupkatha, but in Rupkatha, it's if you go for the same old technique of taking an novel, applying a theory and doing it, the rejection rate is going to be high. So you need to slightly change and modify it. So bit of you bring in economy into it. Okay, more to do with economic aspects of post-colonialism, which is not really explored. So you mix that a bit, other cultures, then you try, you can work on it. Okay, you can work on it.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And the next question is, sir, your perspectives on memes and cultural studies.
Okay. Memes, in a sense, what are they talking about? Because now they are talking about this mobile memes. What meme are they talking about?
Shaila, can you just let us know? Internet memes.
Okay, internet memes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now I said like there is an area known as a digital colonialism. This I am giving it to you because this is all advanced. You can only explore that if you know the basics. Okay, so this area will answer these questions what we are talking about: hyper real space, how this memes or anything, how it is generated, how it is used to make fun of somebody, and is there any colonial agenda behind it or neo-colonial agenda behind it? Okay, so there is a possibility of doing it, but it has to be a serious study if it becomes a research. So you should be able to fix it, okay, the foundation for it, where to start. Then when you do that, you may try, you have to analyze it. Then a typical way of doing research, how memes are done, you should be able to do that. Yeah, if you can try, you can try. These are all very radical. That's what I said, it's an emerging field. It's an emerging field, but you have to make efforts to do it. You have to try to fuse and try.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Participants? Are there any more questions to be asked? You can unmute and ask, or if so, you can put it up in the chat box. Okay. I think there's no questions as of now. So can I just pass on? Dr. Vijay Kumar, can you take it forward from here, sir? Vijay, sir?
It's muted, I think.
Vijay, sir, I think you're muted.
Yes, Aruna. Thank you very much, Aruna.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Alan. It was such a fine presentation.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good, Alan. Nice, Alan. Actually, before I thank Alan, I should just tell that usually some persons are quite fuzzy, but Alan is quite congenial. Whenever we call, he is just open for us. Such a nice person, and this show kind of so humanistic attitude. So that's what I like about the Alan. Generally, about the presentation, I should say it was really professional. Because you took us to the multifarious nature of culture studies and helped us revisit some of the finest pockets in such a short time available. I know that you also have quite an hectic schedule, and that's why you couldn't have an extended session. But then it was so intriguing, especially the language, culture, and power as a phenomenal combination. When you were talking about that, it was so intriguing to listen. And how proficiency in culture studies will improve critical thinking was something which was deeply trenchant and insightful. I was just wondering how proficiency in cultural studies will improve critical thinking. That is really a very profound insight. And you also explained why it is difficult for us to come out of colonization. So there was also wonderful thematic suggestions, especially for researchers in the forums on what to read. Not exclusively in the Indian context, but also from the wide spectrum and different ambits. So that's something that was really quite splendid about your presentation. And then you focused not only on contemporary Indian culture, but you took us, as I said, in this 45 minutes on a metaphorical journey to the various pockets of post-colonialization, colonization, as well as cultural studies, and how it can be applied to cinema, especially because there will be a lot of researchers who may work on media studies. So that will be a wonderful trigger for them that could really stimulate their thinking and provide some interesting caveats for future research. So that's something that I really enjoyed during the course of your talk. And Alan, you have a great knack of presenting the esoteric principles in a very simple way. Especially what I mean is the example that you gave on Avatar to drive home the aspect of colonization. Because for a naive person like me who don't have much knowledge about literature, I will think these are very esoteric principles. But when I listen to your talk, I feel that you explained it in the simplest and profound ways possible. And your interesting observation of how the West are decolonizing curriculum, academia, and science. As an educator, I found that very, very interesting observation. So 45 minutes was pure delight, and the West obsession on how to dissect everything in order to empirically find out, especially the examples that you were talking about, the museum where people study people's brains, and the Western ideology of trying to know something through dissecting it. I mean, these are very interesting observations. As I said, Even for a naive person who doesn't have much of grounding in literature, it was thoroughly, so enjoyable. So we would love to have Alan for our future events, and you would have loved to have Alan, as I said, to the other participants for a long period of time, but then he had some important commitments. That's why he had to truncate his talk today. So thank you, Alan. You did a remarkable justice, within such a short span of time. Pleasure to have you, Alan.
Thank you, Vijay. I'm honored. Yeah.
Over to you, Aruna.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Participants, we come to the end of the session of Dr. Allen, and today is the last day of 1 week of successful FDP program on research methods in language, literature, and linguistics. Now, we would just like to get some feedback from you. So can you just turn on your cameras, and if I could get some feedback from you, it would really be nice. Participants? Please, I would like you to turn on your camera, or you can give it as a words. Unmute yourself and you can let us know. It would definitely be good if you turn on your camera. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So I attended all the FDP sessions, and on each day there were different topics and different types of titles, and that was actually very useful for my research. And on language, especially on language and on reading skills and whatnot, ma'am, they had different type of things, and all the resource persons, they were explaining it very clearly. So I think very informative and very useful session it was, and then I could actually use it for my research work also, ma'am. So thank you for the wonderful FDP, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else? Participants? Okay. Yes. Vijay sir, can you let us know about the future events, and then we can go into the valedictory address, sir?
Sure, Aruna.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, before I do that, I just have some important observations. Observations in the sense, I would just like to inform the participants that we have some new journals in UGC for the January edition. Papers are open. In this regard, I just want to tell you that there are a few organizations which claim that they are alpha and just make calls. If you have any clarifications, please send your mails to alpha@alphaacademy.com for any publication related queries. So there are many who claim to be alpha, but I don't know, can you please post that mail ID in the group? So,
yes, sir, I will just post it right away.
Yes, we have been talking to some UGC journals. There are a couple of journals which are open. In case you are interested to send your papers either to your UGC journal or peer-reviewed journals for the January edition, you are most welcome to drop in a mail to alpha@alpharesearchersacademy.com. It will be posted, and don't send the mail to any other emails. So this is one information. And then secondly, I just wanted to tell you about our forthcoming events. We have 2 events coming up, one in collaboration with New College and another in collaboration with SRM University very shortly. So let me, just give me a minute. I don't know, can you please explain about the event, because I somehow
yes,
find that
sure,
in my mobile.
Sure,
so request our branding manager Aruna to please take over and explain about our next events.
Sure, sir. Thank you. So our next event is starting from Monday, the next week, entire 1 week, where we are going to have the session on 1 week FDP on applying literary theories in research. So this, we are going to have it in collaboration with New College, and definitely This is also going to be very useful for your research prospects. So we kindly request you to make sure you make the best out of it. You can join us. I'll definitely keep posting you the links, and I'll keep you updated with the link of the event also. So that's again in the evenings. So definitely you'll be able to come and join us and make sure that you benefit most of it. And our next event is going to be with SRM College. But as of now, we'll finalize with the title, and definitely we'll let you know soon. It will be mostly in the month of Jan. So one next week, that is directly starting on December 13th, where we have 13th to 17th will be one FDP, free FDP session where you will be able to log in on the link that I have given. And another session will be in January. So most probably it will be before Pongal or after, but I'll keep you definitely posted on it.
I'll add one more thing, Aruna.
Yes,
One more thing. Thank you very much, Aruna, for just giving that kind of forensic details about the event. We have actually closed the registration because it has crossed 500, right, Aruna? Crossed 500 and
587.
587. Yes. But for the benefit of the participants here, probably some of you may not have registered. We will open it for, say, just now for another 10 hours, Aruna. Is that possible, Aruna?
Yes, sir. I'll keep it open for another 10.
Yeah, another 10 hours, we'll keep it open. In case you want to register, please register. It's a big event. It's on applying theories. We are doing it, as a series of theories. We are just covering all theories so that it will be useful for every researcher, regardless of the chosen field of endeavor. When I say chosen field of endeavor, I mean only language, linguistics, and literature. So we have some interesting events coming up. We really thank all the participants for your patronage, and we look forward to your continued support. And we also do it as a kind of a social outreach, because ultimately the bottom line is to just give to the educational community, to give something to the researchers to take away from. That's why we are conducting all these events without charging you anything. So that's how it is. So I look forward to your continued patronage. Thank you very much, participants. Thank you very much once again. And thank you, Dr. Allen, for winding up for the last session, which is ending up on a high. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay Kumar. May I now invite Mr. T. Jai Singh from SN College to give the word of thanks.
Yeah, good evening. Really, it's my immense pleasure to present the word of thanks. On 6th of this month, we had Dr. Shrees Ponnagaram, Assistant Professor, Dwaragadas College, Arambakam, Chennai, who gave us a profuse and significant presentation on presentation and pronunciation skill for professional communication. Thanks a lot, sir, for taking us with you to the untrodden path, the path that is less taken. On 7th of this month, the second day of FTB, we had the resource person, Dr. Pravin Sam, Assistant Professor, SNSN College of Engineering, Chennai, who gave a methodological presentation on the methodology of reading and comprehending using graphic organizers. A heartfelt thanks to Dr. Meena Sharawat, Assistant Professor, Diet, SCERT Delhi, for enlightening all of us on the topic language pedagogy on the third day. Any result of hard work and labor should not be put under the basket, but should be like a candle placed on the candlestick. Similarly, the prospectus of research is in the publication, which would take the knowledge to the ends of the earth. Thanks a lot, Dr. Saravanan, the resource person from Vellore, for sensitizing the participants on this area on the fourth day of FTP. We wholeheartedly thank a resource person, Dr. Allen, Assistant Professor, VIT Chennai, for enlightening the participants on the emerging trend in language, literature, and culture. We thank all the committed participants for your eager participation. We hope that your expectations are fulfilled to a possible extent. I thank our secretary, our principal, and all the members of the Department of English, Saraswati Narayanan College, Madurai, for their cooperation and support. We are really privileged to have the Association of AURA, and our sincere thanks and soulful praise to AURA for all their support and commitment for the free 5-day FTP on research methods in language and linguistics. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Jai Singh, sir, for such a fine, analysis, a fine word of thanks. Thank you very much. And on behalf of AURA, we would also like to be profoundly thankful to you for for your support and for your patronage. So thank you, Dr. Jai Singh, and thank you to the head of the Department of SN College and other faculty members of SN College. We look forward to your patronage continuously. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, participants. I posted the link on the chat box for the registration for the next week FDP, 1 week FDP on applying literary theories and research. And I've also posted the feedback and attendance form for today and an overall feedback form. Please do take time to fill in the details. Thank you and have a great weekend.